Well, it's October, which means Halloween is just around the corner. And every year when it comes up, you can't help but feel a little bit nostalgic. It's been over 20 years since I dressed up like Freddy Krueger one year for Halloween. But one thing that will always remain the same is still the enjoyment I get out of watching a good horror movie on TV, especially around Halloween. So let's have some fun, keep it local, and give you some movies that are guaranteed to scare the bad crap out of you. Up first, we're going old school with The City of Dead from 1960, also known as Horror Hotel in the US. The film follows a student as she visits the fictional village of Whitewood, Massachusetts to research her paper on 17th century witches from New England. Christopher Lee, best known for playing Dracula in the old Hammer horror movies, stars as her college professor. A few plot twists keep this spooky thriller going strong all the way up to the end, with a creepy tone that lends itself perfectly to this black and white era film. Saying this hotel is creepy is an understatement. The look on the other guests' faces is just priceless. Everyone stares in silence with a demeanor of misery. Who would want to stay here? It's so effectively eerie, the band Iron Maiden used scenes from the film in their music video, Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter. Rob Zombie also used an audio clip of Christopher Lee from the movie in the beginning of his song, Dragula. The City of the Dead is worth checking out, and it's actually one of the better witch movies I've seen, and it serves as a decent template on how to make one. The next movie on the list is The Last House on the Left, representing Connecticut on our New England list. It was written and directed by Wes Craven in his first feature film. It's about two teenage girls, Phyllis and Mari, on their way to a concert when they get sidetracked into a dangerous neighborhood to score a little weed before a show. A boy on the street promises them some marijuana back at his place. Little do they know he's the son of an escaped convict who's waiting back at the apartment with his partners in crime. Once inside, the girls are trapped with the criminals. Meanwhile, Mari's parents are planning a surprise party for her and become increasingly concerned when she doesn't return home. Will they find their daughter before it's too late? This is another one with an interesting plot twist that reignites the second half of the movie. The Last House on the Left is disturbing and downright shocking at times. It's an instance where the unknown cast and low budget actually help the realism and tone of the film. The actors do an incredible job of portraying the despicable human being quality that their characters possess. It plays on every parent's worst nightmare. It's also dark, violent, and holds nothing back. Definitely worth a spot on the list. Up next, we're heading back to Massachusetts with a movie that's earned itself a cult following. 2001's Session 9, set and filmed on location at the old Danvers State Mental Hospital. The film follows an asbestos removal crew as they bid for a huge job at an abandoned insane asylum in Massachusetts. After putting in an overbid, tension begins to unfold as the pressure and personal relationships of the workers start to come to light. The images of the decaying building, with its morbid history, create Session 9's atmosphere, which fills you with paranoia. Veteran character actors like David Caruso, Josh Lucas, Brandon Sexton III, and Peter Mullen certainly help fill out the cast of this low-budget chiller. Session 9 isn't your typical horror movie. It passes on the gore, and instead builds its suspense and creepiness through isolation, atmosphere, and dialogue. I think director Brad Anderson did a good job on a low-budget and short time frame, creating a spooky, psychological horror film. The decision to film on location created a realistic feel any Hollywood set designer could only dream of. And it's that haunting atmosphere that makes Session 9 really stand out from all the other typical horror movies, and also worthy of a spot on this list. Next up, representing Rhode Island, is The Conjuring, a movie which just came out this past summer. The story is set in 1971, following a family as they move into a run-down farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island. Soon after settling into their new place, Roger, Carolyn, and the 5 daughters start to have some creepy and unsettling experiences. Eventually, Ed and Lorraine Warren are brought in to help, a husband and wife team of paranormal investigators. They soon dig up the dark history of the property and determine the house needs a spiritual cleansing. The force that haunts the Perron family begins to get violent, and evidence must be collected quickly before an exorcism can be performed by the church. The Conjuring does an impressive job of pacing and building up suspense. The bone-chilling moments of terror are well directed, and build gradually before the house erupts into complete chaos. You're left guessing when and where the scares will come from. The plot and style is a familiar one, and a throwback to movies like Poltergeist and The Exorcist. It's also reminiscent of Amityville Horror, which, like The Conjuring, was inspired by the work of Ed and Lorraine Warren. This film does a nice job of bringing to screen all the elements that make up a great haunting movie. If you didn't catch it when it was in the theaters, give it a shot when it comes out on DVD. Up next, we're heading to New Hampshire for In the Mouth of Madness from 1995. The movie stars Sam Neill as an insurance investigator brought in to help find missing horror writer Sutter Kane. He's hired by the director of the author's publishing company, played by Charlton Heston. With the help of Kane's editor, the two must track down the unfinished final story of the popular series. What will John Trent and Kane's editor Linda Stiles find if they track down this missing author? Their journey will get you hooked into this dreary nightmare, full of hallucinations, bizarre monsters, and scary faces, inside a world John Carpenter creates that makes you question what's real. Watching the movie, it becomes pretty apparent that missing author Sutter Kane is actually based on horror legend Stephen King. For one, the books in the movie look like one of his novels, and the film was directed by John Carpenter, a friend of King's. In the Mouth of Madness definitely has its moments of eeriness. Sam Neill does a terrific job of portraying a guy plagued by terrifying nightmares, who starts to slowly unravel as his reality becomes uncertain. It's like being trapped inside a Stephen King novel, and that ain't bad. Well, speaking of Stephen King, a movie based on his work would no doubt make it onto my list. The only question is which one. Being that it has to be set in New England barely narrows it down. There's still a lot of classics to sort through, so I'm going to go with my personal favorite. Representing Maine on my list of scariest movies set in New England is Pet Sematary from 1989. To me, this is one of the creepiest horror movies of all time. Stephen King really taps into some major fears we all have about dealing with death, and how we do anything to get a loved one back, even if sometimes dead is better. The film follows the Creed family as they settle into their new home, not too far from a busy stretch of highway. They soon meet their new neighbor, Judd Crandall, who mentions the pet cemetery located nearby. One day, Lewis discovers the family cat Church has been run over and killed. This is when we finally get to see what the pet cemetery is capable of. Old Judd takes him to bury the cat, but the next morning when Church returns home, he's not the same. After attacking Lewis, he soon realizes what gets buried at the pet cemetery comes back, pure evil. Sometime later during a family picnic, Lewis's son Gage wanders onto the highway and gets hit by a truck, tragically killing him. Soon after, in the depths of despair, Lewis considers burying his son at the pet cemetery. Will Lewis Creed take the risk for the chance of bringing his son back, or is it true that sometimes dead is better? There's a lot in this movie that operates on a very creepy level. The overall tone and heavy subject matter is enough to keep you feeling uneasy. Pet Sematary is a perfect movie for this list. It's creepy and filmed mostly in New England, in the great state of Maine. If you haven't seen it, this one comes highly recommended. And now, the movie you've been waiting for. The scariest movie set in New England, period. While this isn't your traditional horror movie, I still can't think of anything more terrifying than Jaws from 1975 topping off the list. What can you say about Jaws that hasn't already been said? Nothing. It's by far one of the greatest movies of all time. It's left a lasting impression in Hollywood, and it's a prime example of how to make an effective, scary movie. The film takes place in the fictional Amity Island, a community that relies heavily on tourism fueled by its local beaches. At the start of tourist season, the remains of a missing female swimmer turn up, prompting the chief of police, Martin Brody, played by Roy Schneider, to consider closing the beach after learning she was killed by a shark. Eventually, the mayor has no choice but to give Chief Brody the funds to hire and kill the shark, forming a team with a local fisherman and marine biologist. The three set out for a legendary mission, an epic showdown, against one of the most frightening opponents in movie history, Jaws. The cast is nothing short of phenomenal. Roy Schneider's nervous energy just fills you with anxiety. He's high-strung the entire time, a quality that inevitably rubs off on the audience. Richard Dreyfuss also does a terrific job in a supporting role that gives instant credibility to the character Matt Hooper, capturing the intensity of the role perfectly. And Robert Shaw created one of the most memorable characters in film history, in which he gives a natural and convincing performance of a seasoned fisherman. You really get to know the characters, putting you on the boat with them along for the ride, investing us in what happens to them. The end result frightened moviegoers in a film that continues to terrify its audience today, especially now in Massachusetts, where the great whites have been spotted more frequently. Jaws often gets overlooked during the repeats around Halloween. I know a giant shark isn't part of the traditional theme of ghosts and vampires, but if you're looking for something scary, what's better than open water and going up against a great white? This Halloween, try something a little different and pop this one in. Well, that concludes the list of the scariest movies set in New England. Hopefully I gave you at least one video to check out that's new, or even one to revisit. Thanks for hanging in there with me, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Let's start the discussion now. What do you think of the scariest movies set in New England? You know what mine are, so feel free to leave yours in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, and happy Halloween.